Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. This TV series explores a variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. For many of the topics that we address, whether coping with peak oil and the climate crisis, or opposing the global economic system that causes wars and oppresses people in poor countries, or strengthening democracy and human rights, we keep coming back to one solution that pertains to all of these: creating a sustainable and humane local economy so that we can meet our needs with fewer resources without damaging the rest of the world, and while strengthening our local communities' resilience and democracy. This month's TV program will focus on the local economy. We'll provide some fresh ways to understand and support local economics and some new resources and activities. Most of the examples that we'll discuss exist in Thurston County, Washington, but the general principles will apply to any local community. I'm happy to welcome three guests who have been working in various ways to support a healthy and sustainable local economy. We have Marie Poland here, and Sash Sunday and John McLean. Good to have you all here. I want to create a context for our conversation about local economy. Everybody talks about the global economy and the market economy. And John, can you just lay out what some of the main problems you see with mainstream economics and what problems or shortcomings are you trying to solve?
Well, Glenn, thank you. Economics has really narrowed in its focus. It's treating depletion of capital, natural capital, as income, and it also dismisses many aspects of our human capacities to solve these problems. It only measures money-based exchange. So we're trying in our local economic study group to open up the understanding of economics to include gift economies, to also look at future generations and the health of future generations as a basis for our economic organization.
Yeah, and the current model focuses on big corporations and, quote, job creation, and your approach really goes beyond that.
Well, our current economics relies on growth, and we're at a historically new state in the evolution of humankind. We need to learn how to live in balance with our natural ecology and do that in a way that's equitable socially. So sustainability combines both the ecological and the social fairness dimensions.
Yeah. People are finally discovering that all of our natural resources are limited. We're probably at peak oil, the point where we just can't extract oil at a faster and faster rate like we have been, and we'll have to start declining just because of the hard geological realities. The climate crisis means we have to stop burning so much coal and oil and other fossil fuels. The national and global economies are crashing, and all this comes together in a perfect storm that prevents us from returning to business as usual, and that fantasy of just endless growth. So Mother Nature is requiring us, as you're saying, to do different things with our economy. I wonder if each of you could just briefly brainstorm a couple of the elements of a truly sustainable economy. What would a truly sustainable economy look like, Marie?
Well, I see it as we focus more on the connections that we have within the local environment that we're in, then things end up being more reciprocal. And so within a local economy, you have more support of a business that may be owned by your neighbors or the people that you know, and actually impact directly your neighborhood and the people in the surrounding area in beneficial ways.
Okay, Sash?
Well, in a truly sustainable economy would need to take into consideration the limited resources and the population, and hopefully, well, we would try to allocate all of those resources as appropriately as possible and make sure that there's access for all. I don't necessarily know how to do this, but that would be lovely.
John, an idea from you?
I think a key idea, and we've talked about this in our local economics group, is more of an economics of sharing. So moving back from the hyperconsumption tendencies that are fueled by our financial system, because we're dealing with major financial imbalances still that are driving the extraction of resources and also turning our relationships into commodities even. So it's a more face-to-face economy. It's getting more of what we need locally. It's going from jobs to livelihood. So instead of getting a job to get money and take the money to buy what you need, we're going to be getting what we need more directly through working with each other. And food is a wonderful place to start. We can talk about other economic sectors.
And I keep thinking about getting away from this notion of gross domestic product, where every financial transaction just gets added, whether it's something good or something bad. So if I have a factory that pollutes the air and it eats the paint off your house and you have to repaint your house often because you're downwind from my factory, well, that's good for the gross domestic product because it adds to the painting industry and the painters and the paint producing factories and so forth. Or if I shoot you, that's a job for doctors or undertakers or something. And we have to look at other ways of measuring how well we're doing without just raw numbers, without caring about whether something is good or bad. I like the gross domestic or the gross national happiness that they are doing in Nepal.
Definitely. And when you say that also, Glenn, it makes me think about how another aspect of sustainable economy can be whether or not each individual actually feels as if they're giving their gifts and what it is that they feel called that they're here to do or actually have some skill at. And so it just, as we continue to find what those are for each of us and end up encouraging one another in those ways, I feel that our society is set up in a way that doesn't necessarily encourage that type of delving in and really sourcing what those things are. Then once we find those, we can share those with one another, and then it becomes more of a sharing, sustainable economy.
Sasha, I want to check out something with you. From what we're talking about, we need to transition. And we really have to transition our economy and our local communities toward sustainability. And I know that the Transition Town movement, which is active in lots of places around the world, including in Olympia, is working very proactively to deal with these issues of climate and peak oil and economic collapse. In fact, the Olympia FOR's August 2009 TV program was a full hour on the Transition Town movement with some local guests. And people can watch that at our website, www.olympiafor.org. So how do you see, Sash, the connection between the Transition Town movement and your interest in a vibrant local sustainable economy?
Well, I think that establishing or developing a very strong local economy is a great way to create a foundation for an actually sustainable future. And if we work on that now, before we're in crisis mode, it will be a lot more pleasant, and we'll be able to do things with a lot of intention and figure out how we want things to be and build that up and have that in place before anything else, before we're forced into it.
Yeah, and I know that the transition movement approaches it in this very positive way. It's like, how do we want our future to be in this town?
Right.
And let's do that.
It's exciting.
Rather than, holy crap, everything is crumbling all around us. How can we bail ourselves out? I mean, it's a very positive thing, and they've really had good success in engaging people to envision the future they want at the local level, which varies from town to town.
That transition is a way to improve our lives. It's a way to joy. It's a way to meaning. And part of the new economics is to get clear the relationship. The economy is a means to an end. The end is human happiness. So some of the economics of happiness movement is reflected in initiatives like Sustainable Seattle or City of Vancouver or Victoria and Vancouver Island, where they do surveys that they have a happiness initiative. So human happiness, human well-being is a legitimate, sound basis for economic policy.
Right, and so what you're talking about is different indicators than what we've had, where instead of just gross national product or gross domestic product. It's like indicators like happiness and the fulfillment of, like you said, or do people really feel like they're able to give their gifts to the community and so forth?
Right, and what you're saying, Glenn, it makes me think of some of those, what areas of your life are you perhaps wanting more happiness? Is it in your job life? Is it in your home life? Is it in your family? Is it in your health and well-being? So really looking at the broad spectrum of the different areas of your life and what area then you could potentially work on to improve your level of happiness in that area.
Yeah. The Occupy movement caught everybody's attention, and we did a program on that, our January program in 2012. And the Occupy movement was focusing on how the United States government and the giant corporations have perverted the national economy to enrich the richest 1% even further at the expense of the other 99% of us. And all of you are working toward a different kind of economy, an economy where ordinary people matter. And I wonder if you could describe, John, some of the features of an economy where ordinary people matter.
Well, measuring well-being, first of all, having a starting point of policy of making the world work for everybody and having that as a principle. So caring for one another is a legitimate basis for policy. I noticed in the Occupy movement, they had a free kitchen, they had free health care down at the park.
Yeah.
I saw free haircuts going on down there. So they were embodying that principle. So, but there's also a huge amount to discuss in the national and international domains, especially in terms of finance and financial policy.
Sash, one of the things that you're interested in talking about based on the phone conversation we had to prepare for the program was the human connections as well as sustainability. We think of sustainability in terms of like the environment and resources and so forth, and you're emphasizing the human connections. Tell us how a vibrant and successful local economy can help human interconnectedness.
Well, it can help just because you're interacting with your community on a daily basis to meet your needs, rather than ordering something online that gets delivered while you're at work. You don't even see your UPS driver. But it's another driving force towards the shift. Like, we're not just getting pushed by peak oil. It's also, it's the happiness factor that we were just talking about. But our current economy has really created an isolated culture. And by going back and looking at your community and working, buying the things you need and interacting with everyone around you, that can really help to reverse that.
Mm-hmm. So if your stuff is made locally by people you know, that's different from having it made in a sweatshop in China?
Right. Well, okay, so if there's a really great line in the book Sacred Economics that we've been reading, and it's that we are completely self-sufficient from our neighbors in our community, but we're wholly reliant upon thousands of people, or people thousands of miles away from us that we'll never meet, and there's no accountability in either direction for us. That's not a direct quote, but that's my version. And that's where we're going. That's what, you can jump in, I'm feeling like. But yeah, we have gotten to the point where we work to make money so that we can go out and buy things. And then we can buy our house, we can buy our car, we can buy our lawnmowers, and then we go home at the end of the day, we eat our meals alone in our houses, we mow our lawns by ourselves, and we're feeling discontent. And that makes us very susceptible to the marketing that we're constantly barraged with. And that's telling us that we need to buy more things. And that's sort of how this whole thing is perpetuated.
It's a vicious cycle.
Right.
Well, all three of you are connected through a local economic study group, and you're studying, among other things, what's called a gift economy. Historically, that predated what we call the market economy, and you provided some readings that I read to prepare for the show that lays out that it debunks this myth that people have always been operating on a market basis, that's wired into human DNA or something. Right. Tell us something about the origins of economics, and then tell us something about the functioning of a gift economy, because both of those are different from what we read in Econ 101 textbooks.
Well, economics began in the 18th century as political economy, as a a branch of moral philosophy. Adam Smith, author of The Wealth of Nations, was the chair of moral philosophy at University of Edinburgh, and he wrote a book before Wealth of Nations called The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which had sympathy and empathy for one another as a main category that he described in terms of a principle of social organization.
So it's not the cruel, calculating, market-based
Our,
stuff that they
our
tell us
economics
now.
has narrowed our view of the human being to being rational, utility maximizing, self-interested, individual, whereas in truth we're radically interconnected with each other. We get our meaning from community, we get our joy from our relationships. And in prior societies, and one of the first readings we did in our group was a writing from an economic anthropologist talking about how societies in what we'd call primitive economies have been organized, and they're based on gift giving and sharing and redistribution and reciprocity and potlatch, and people engage in their economic functions to get what they need, but to enjoy social standing, not for just personal gain.
It's not based on my sense that I have more value if I have more stuff.
Right.
It's the collaborative. I can help our tribe or our community, and everybody else can help it in various ways. And if we bring down a big animal, we all eat it, and we all make sure that nobody gets.
And there's huge value to be
hungry.
created through recovering those capacities. And our economic theory has actually dismissed those capacities.
So it seems like some of what you're trying to do is rediscover those and find ways to bring them back through local economics.
And call out where people are doing it now.
Yeah.
And help give
Yeah.
identity to that as a principle.
Marie, you do a lot of work with to strengthen the local economy. Tell us how buying locally helps our economy, and tell us something about Sustainable South Sound.
Sure.
And we'll talk about the Buy Local program a bit later, but I want
Okay.
to just connect right now on Sustainable South Sound and the importance of buying locally.
Great. Okay. So, as Sash had mentioned a few questions ago, just one of the things about buying locally is that the footprint, the ecological footprint that we end up having on our community in our world is going to shrink when we actually buy and support local, because there's going to be less transportation involved in distributing those goods and services and things like that. There's going to be, so regarding a sustainability outlook, that's one of the basics of buying locally and how that's going to support our community. Then you have all the ways in which supporting a locally owned business is going to give people more empowerment within their jobs, within that business, because they're going to know the owner instead of working for a corporation where there's rules and policies that they may have no chance ever to change. And so it empowers individuals working for those places, as well as empowering those of us who actually are coming to those businesses. Perhaps there are goods and things that we want that they may not have access to, and then they know, oh, there's people want this certain type of food, or people want this type of good.
So you get a feedback loop that actually helps the connection work better than if the corporation is headquartered back in Delaware and they have no idea what people in Olympia
You got
want.
it. You got it.
And, but a local thing can be responsive and quicker.
Definitely.
I like your term accountability, Sash.
Yeah.
Yes, very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that gets lost, where you get infuriated with some big corporation that doesn't get it. But if there's some accountability and the local thing, that works. We in October of 2011, there was a food summit here in the Olympia area, and a lot of people participated in various activities related to that. And Sasha, I wonder if you could tell us something about what that food summit was and the action plan that arose from that.
Sure. The Food Summit was something organized by TJ Johnson and Sustainable South Sound. Was that? Yes. And the goal was to come up with an action plan for Thurston County to develop for food security, meaning if we couldn't truck in the food, would we be able to survive? Would we be secure? And so they followed a plan created by, I think, Multnomah County, who has already developed an action plan and are starting to carry it out.
Yeah, and that's
And
the
so-
county in where Portland, Oregon
Yeah.
is, and they're
Yes.
way ahead of
They're
pretty
doing
much
great.
everybody on everything.
Yeah, they're doing really well.
Yeah.
They even have a TV show. So the Food Summit in Olympia was to bring the community together and brainstorm some ideas of what a healthy food system would look like and come up with some steps to try to get there. And then develop a really concrete action plan over the course of the year based on that, or maybe a couple of years.
You happen to own a small business, a locally owned small business here, with Oli Kraut, which, based on what I read at the website, sounds really great. I've never eaten it yet, but I certainly will. I'll go find some. It's available at the Co-op and some other places. Tell us something about Oli Kraut, what it is, and how that expresses your values for local food.
Well, Oli Kraut is a raw fermented vegetable business here in town. We make sauerkraut and kimchi and pickles. We source our produce locally as much as possible, so we have partnerships with probably about a dozen farms in the area during the season. Last year, we bought 10,000 pounds of cabbage from Thurston County, which was exciting. We are selling it in the area in which we would be comfortable buying the produce. So far that's Portland to Seattle. And we don't ever plan on going as far as California. We have a little criteria we use to determine how far is okay. But we would be comfortable in all of Washington State, I think.
And you teach people how to make their own?
Yeah, my business partner, Summer Bach, teaches a lot of classes. I've taught some of them, and we do fermentation classes, and then she's also a nutritionist, so she talks a lot about eating raw fermented foods and probiotics.
Yeah, you folks know the scientific stuff so that it's done
Right.
safely, correctly, nutritionally.
Sure. I mean, it happens also to be a really natural process that people have been doing for a really long time and happens to be extremely safe. It's how people
even
survive.
without going to college.
Healthy,
Right.
probiotic.
Although I did study it in college.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, it's real stuff. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not something people would be concerned about because it's not manufactured by a corporate industrial.
I would argue it's
Factory.
better because it's not manufactured at a large corporation.
I would trust
Yeah,
that.
factory.
And you got a website, olykraut.com, OLYKRAUT.com. And so it was interesting to visit the website. And I will be looking for that at the Co-op.
Great.
And then we got so many other businesses, small things, little niche markets of all kinds of things that it's worth
Absolutely.
lifting up. Marie, you work with the Olympia Food Co-op's Local Products Committee. Everybody loves the Olympia Food Co-op because it's so good in so many ways. It's just an outstanding job of meeting people's need and reflecting the values that we have here in the community. And you serve on the Co-op's Local Products Committee. Tell us about that.
Sure. It's actually the Local Product and Farm Committee. And so what we have done so far on a farmer basis is we've actually worked with the region's farms to grow specific produce for the co-op so that we can actually sell as much local produce as possible. So then that committee expanded to be the Local Farm and Product Committee. And so now what we're looking at is what local products do we have in each of the departments. That includes the dairy cooler where Sasha's Oli Kraut is held, as well as other, say, local salsas. There's also packaged grocery products that are shelf-stable, tortilla chips, popcorn, things like that. And then you also have the health and beauty aids section. We also have a bulk department where there's locally made granolas. We also have a bakery section, which is full of local bakeries. And what we're doing is we're wanting to identify, okay, who are the local products businesses within the co-op. What are those products so that someone can come in, identify the products easily, and actually support as many local products as possible and local businesses as possible in the different departments.
That's really, really neat. You have an idea about a way for restaurants to identify local ingredients. Tell us about that.
You got it, yes. So all the farmers that we work with are going to be getting stickers that say, "Ask me what's local today." Those farmers will be giving to the local restaurants, and actually it makes me think of, we will give those stickers as well to producers, local producers, so that if Oli Kraut is served at a local restaurant, SOSH will be able to give that local restaurant that sticker so they can put it on their window, and that a person coming in can say, "Oh yeah, I want to ask what's local," so that the businesses are encouraged to continue to buy local, as well as know that people are looking and they want more local.
It's just a great win-win all the way around.
Yeah.
That's
The
reflects-
multiplier effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And when we were talking about the program, I think all three of you, when we were talking on the phone to prepare for this, all three of you in your individual phone conversation mentioned the multiplier effect, which people get in Economics 101, how, a dollar circulates and blah, 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 blah. And all of you say that for the local economy, it circulates way better and way more vigorously locally. You had some numbers? One of you
You
had
bet,
some numbers.
yep. So-
Tell us about that.
So the economic multiplier states that when you spend $1 at a locally owned and operated business, 60 cents of that dollar ends up recirculating within your community. If you take and compare that dollar, a $1 spent at a chain or franchise business, 20 cents out of that dollar circulates within the local economy. And if you look at a corporate business, 6 cents ends up circulating within the local economy. So 60 cents for a locally owned, 20 cents for a franchise, and 6 cents for a corporate. So it's 3 to 10 times more beneficial to spend that dollar locally.
And that's before producing locally.
Yes.
So if you're actually producing locally, I bet that 60 cents is
I'll bet you're right.
yeah.
quite a bit higher.
Right.
I'll
yeah,
bet you're
if,
right.
If it's like the farm, and so yeah.
And not
it's
only
amazing.
that, but it also, I don't believe that it also looks at how many times that dollar is taxed, and that the taxation from that community also goes back into the community, right? So you're actually building more
Yeah.
local tax dollars every
supports the
time,
schools.
right?
Buying local supports the schools.
Yes,
Or
you
the
got it.
schools
It
can
supports
Yeah.
Medical
The
One.
You
schools
got it.
can support the local businesses through their procurement practices.
Yeah,
as well.
we should talk about that too,
That would
because
be nice.
one of you, I think you might have said, what if like hospitals were to buy local supplies or other institutional?
This is one topic that is finding its way into the action plan coming out of the Food Summit, is how can we direct the purchasing power of our local institutions to buy local, especially local food. There's an exemplary program already that the Olympia School District has to source from local farms. There's opportunities to replicate that through all the other school districts. There's opportunities for other institutions like hospitals to buy local, or and even laundry services or others where they direct their purchasing power to the local businesses. And there's great examples of how those can be organized as cooperatives that we can draw on from around the country.
And Sash, you have this concept of a food hub that would create some solutions, help things. Tell us
Right.
about that.
It was an idea that came out of the Food Summit. I think that was where most people around here started talking about it. But could be some sort of central physical location where perhaps there would be help, sort of like a distributor almost. So a restaurant could call in and say, "I would like some local lettuce." They don't have to call 5 farms to find it. The person at the food hub will get in touch with the farms, or maybe even already have
Yeah.
their stuff there.
Yeah.
And so it can help with that. It could also potentially help with deliveries for local businesses, maybe provide space for a community kitchen or a commercial kitchen that could be rented, cooler space that could be used by farmers and processors,
Yeah.
and a meeting place for people to like work on building the community and the local economy.
So it would provide basically some infrastructure related to the
Right.
food system
Yeah.
that supports the local growers, processors,
And the
restaurants,
eaters
consumers,
even, yes,
yeah,
yeah.
everybody.
It would be fun to have a cafe in it that served local food and
wow,
have
yeah.
it be a real,
Yeah.
yeah.
Marie, let's talk for a bit about the Buy Local program that you run for Sustainable South Sound. Tell us something about Sustainable South Sound first, what that is, and then let's also talk about the Buy Local. And when you talk about the Buy Local, I'll hold a nice poster.
Great.
So tell us about Sustainable South Sound first.
You bet. So Sustainable South Sound is a nonprofit organization within the community who started and began focusing on doing research regarding sustainability within Thurston County. And from finding out that there were certain sustainability indicators that were either improving or decreasing in the level of sustainability, they realized they needed to take on projects. And so they are dedicated to sustainability within the community of Thurston County. And so one of the programs they wanted to do was a local economy program, and thus the Buy Local program. The Buy Local program focuses on creating a resilient economy within this region. And a couple ways that the Buy Local program does that is by educational purposes, which is the poster that you're holding, Glenn, ends up, that's posted around town at local businesses and other public locations to help remind people about the benefits of buying locally and how that actually supports us within this region. The other thing that, one of the other main things that the Buy Local program does is we want to make sure that buying local is more accessible. And so what we've done is we have currently about 164 local business members that have participated in this Buy Local savings book and directory that you have that is for purchase, that people can look through and look at the hours of operation and the contact information for these businesses, so that perhaps a local business may not be open as late in the evening because they're not corporately run. So you know what time they're open till, and you can actually access them more readily. Not only that, but you're able to also, in many cases, save money when you do support that local business, and you can try it out then for a discount and see how that works for you.
Yeah, and the website is for Sustainable South Sound is www.sustainablesouthsound.org.
Yes.
Great name, and it's an easy to remember website then.
Yeah.
SustainableSouthSound.org.
Yep.
Yeah, years ago, I did some volunteer work with them. We were looking for indicators about different kinds of sustainability, and the one I worked on was what would a sustainable politics be? And there were some indicators you could track, like what percentage of the population is registered to vote, what percentage of the population actually does vote, how easy is it for people to run for office, things like that. There's some indicators you can track for sustainability in the electoral political sphere. Open meetings, open records, you can know what the government's doing. And then other people are tracking sustainability in areas of housing and water supply and education and stuff. Every sector, you could identify some indicators and then track how we're doing. And
You
I'm
bet.
glad you're doing this for local economy. The Buy Local is just a great thing. There's another example that I think of now as a Buy Local opportunity that we actually will feature on the TV program for May of 2012, and that's have our own locally owned, publicly owned electric utility. The utility that we have, Puget Sound Energy, used to be owned by capitalist stockholders with a headquarters in Bellevue, Washington. Then it got bought out by capitalists who are largely in Australia and a bunch of other places. So here's this corporation that's not the least bit accountable to us, owned by people halfway around the world, about as far away from local as you can get, 12,000 miles away. And the Thurston County Public Utility District, which is publicly owned by the people of Thurston County, is exploring the feasibility of whether to buy out the electrical service for Thurston County. And so there's a petition campaign. They're trying to get it on the ballot and see if the voters will go for it. And it ought to, we'll focus about this on the May 2012 TV program, but they ought to be able to provide electricity at a cheaper rate because it's publicly owned. They don't need to siphon off money for profits. As a public utility, they'd be able to get federal hydropower, like Bonneville Power Administration juice. And because it's local, they would have way better accountability. You'd know the people, you'd know it's people from our own community doing the managing and the various employees, including the crews that take care of storm damage. So people would actually know where to find the houses that don't have power instead of waiting for a week. It just seems like a win-win all the way around. We'll look at the next month's TV program for that. There are so many good programs happening around here that I think people need to know about. One that all of you have mentioned is this Enterprise for Equity that Lisa Smith operates here. Marie, can you tell us about Enterprise for Equity?
You bet. Yes, so Enterprise for Equity is an organization, a not-for-profit organization, that helps individuals that have limited incomes start their own businesses, not only in the realm of services and retail businesses or restaurants or food products, but also farms. So they're really reaching a broad spectrum of really assisting individuals to start their own businesses within this community.
And they provide all kinds of help so that people don't get burned by starting something that's not going to work or doesn't have the planning.
They have very thorough business plan, a very thorough setup for business plans. Sash, did you want to say a little more about that?
Yeah, Woolly Kraut went through it. I graduated from the program, and it was very useful. You develop a business plan. You meet with a lawyer to learn about business entities. You meet with an accountant to learn about taxes. You talk to a lot of different people who have a lot of experience as entrepreneurs, and it helps a lot. And it was very useful for us, and I know it's helped a lot of businesses in our community.
Yeah, I know. A lot of folks have gone through this, and it really helps to have some economic democracy so that otherwise we're stuck with the thing where the only people in business are really big rich people or corporations. And this is like ordinary people can start a business, and Lisa Smith can help you do it.
They're also
and they operate a loan fund.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
that's what I was going to say. Yep, thank you.
And their website is enterpriseforequity.org, another easy to remember name if you know the name of the project. John, tell us about the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. They are based in Olympia, but they help people in a wider area?
Well, it's an organization that is based in Olympia. It's spun off of the Cooperative Electric, the PUD Association, Public Utility District Association. They work in rural communities to help establish co-ops a lot for farms, but they have a new initiative they hope to be starting soon on urban co-ops. So they would help cooperatives form, provide the kind of business enterprise development services that Enterprise for Equity provides as well. And part of the goal of a co-op is to create economic security for the members. So that's one of the goals. So it's a different model of creating economic security for ourselves. It's through our relationships, and it's a great vehicle institutionally that can grow to help us meet our needs locally and develop the economics of sharing we've been talking about.
So that's the Northwest Cooperative
Development Center. Yeah, they're based in Olympia. They operate around the whole Pacific Northwest region, and their executive director, Diane Gasway, might be an interesting guest for you at some point.
Well, you know, when you're talking about the co-op, it makes me think of the Tulip Credit Union, which is another form of local thing that they operate. The Tulip Credit Union operates out of the Olympia Food Co-op East Side location on Pacific Avenue near the Ford dealership. And it's the TULIP stands for Thurston Union of Low-Income People, it spells TULIP. And it's a chance for people to get their savings someplace and take out small loans. And it's a very empowering thing. It's the kind of thing we're talking about.
It roots the capital in the community, and it's a
Right.
mission-driven organization.
Yeah.
It's a social business
Right.
of a type. And so calling out those types of organizations that are motivated by those principles, that's
Right.
part of our work in our
Yeah.
local economics group.
Way better than sending your money to a bank that takes it to
And we
Wall
have
Street
other
and plays with
institutions
it.
locally, other credit unions,
Yeah.
Generations.
Yeah, any credit union is
OB,
owned by the members.
Yeah.
All their credit unions are co-ops are owned by the people, rather than by out-of-state capitalists.
And even locally, OliFed has actually, they don't sell their loans.
Right.
And so they keep their money locally
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
And they've supported over 100 nonprofit organizations
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, Olympia Federal Savings and Loan is a good local thing, even though they're not a co-op.
Right.
They're still ethical.
Yeah.
And,
Heritage, Timberland.
yeah, there's several.
Yep, yep.
Let's see, a couple of you mentioned in preparing for the program, Thurston County's Economic Development Council, the EDC, that does a lot of good stuff. And you keep seeing the name Economic Development Council in the newspaper, but people probably don't know who they are or what they do. Could somebody tell us about the Thurston County Economic Development Council?
Well, I work a bit with the Thurston EDC. I work a lot with some of the offshoots of the Thurston EDC, the projects that the Thurston EDC supports. And one of those is Thurston Energy. And Thurston Energy was really worked hand in hand with Thurston Climate Action Team, receiving a grant, some grant funding, and then funneling that through the Thurston EDC to help with doing energy audits of businesses and residents. And then through those energy audits, people were able to identify how they could save energy by doing certain upgrades to their homes or their businesses, and then therefore spurring on economic development by giving a contractor or other people that actually do that work business at doing insulation or changing out their windows and things like that, creating that flux of economic development. And then in the long term, really, they're saving money, they're saving energy through doing those changes. There's also the Small Business Development Center through the Thurston EDC and the Business Resource Center. And both of those organizations support businesses by providing entrepreneurial skills and other financial trainings and other trainings that are usually free or very low cost to business owners in this area to really help them make sure that they're staying in business for the long haul.
Okay, so somebody could contact the Thurston County Economic Development Council, tell them what you need, and they'll get you to the right place.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yep, you got it.
There's another entity that a couple of you folks mentioned, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. It spells out BALLE, the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies. And they work with national and local efforts like the kinds that we've been talking about. And they include Sustainable South Sound as a member. What else would you want to say about BALLE?
BALLE is a great organization that provides local first efforts with tools on how to support the program and how to run a program that can be successful within communities. So one of the great things participating as a BALLE organization last year in their conference is just the flurry of people that some of us that have worked primarily solo or as individuals or with small groups within our communities have been able to then find out what some of the other organizations have found within their communities. I feel like one of the things that it also helped me do as a buy local lead within this community is understand to reach out to others within my community that are like-minded and really find allies that are here so that I can feel supported and we can all feel supported in what it is that we're wanting to do in creating this effort together.
I want to put in a plug for an upcoming event. It'll be upcoming for the people who are watching this program before April 14. It'll be recent history for those watching it after April 14. This is the Sustainability Summit that's going to occur at South Puget Sound Community College on Saturday, April 14 from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. David Corton, whom everybody knows and loves, will provide the keynote speech. And we encourage people who are watching the program before April 14 to participate. people watching after April 14, ask your friends what what you missed. Tell us about the Sustainability Summit at SPSCC.
Well, David Carton is on the board of Bali, and
Okay.
I think the Bali organization reflects that it's a national movement. He'll be keynoting, and it's an opportunity like the Food Summit to conduct a discussion, a planning discussion. It's a citizens' discussion to imagine what a thriving local economy will look like and begin to plan those steps. And it's led by folks from the Transition OLI team, so how to deal with the energy descent that we face.
The subtitle is Unleashing Our Creative Genius.
Our social imagination.
And
if you will.
that's a creative and a very enticing subtitle.
Yeah, I think if we look at the preferred future that we want to get to, which is more connected with each other, and then the present, even in the midst of all these crises, we have tremendous resources. The present is a resource to get to our preferred future.
All four of us have been reading a book called Sacred Economics by a fellow named Charles Eisenstein, and it is just the most exciting and fresh stuff, and I find myself agreeing with pretty much everything he says. It's just great, creative, fun stuff. And you're reading this as part of your study group that the three of you do. Would one of you just mention some of the key points or what his angle is, Charles Eisenstein's message in his book, Sacred Economics? And we'll give the website, which is www.sacred-economics.com. And you can read it online.
I really enjoyed that book because it explains how the gift economy can grow. The economic problems we face represent misallocation of resources. So hooking people's gifts, what they want to give with needs, is the direction we need to go. It's the economics of connection with one another rather than separation. And there's also a long description of the money system, and I feel like he's pointing the direction of how we can run that money system backwards. So expanding our economic life through gift giving, through exchange, through non-money based exchange is really a form of a radical act that starts to remove us from that destructive system. And there are a lot of big picture reform efforts, but also a lot of immediate things we can do in our face-to-face life with each other.
There's a lot of consciousness raising in there. It's like, oh, I never thought of it that way before. And some good solid information. I find that there are a lot of books and other resources that will do a good critique of what's wrong with our current economics, but they're kind of lightweight on solutions. And he really has fun playing with the solutions that would be practical if we would open our minds toward trying these out.
You bet. And one of the things that he also mentions is, as I mentioned earlier, is really finding what it is that you feel that you're gifted at and then sharing that and really identifying not only where you're gifted and what you have to give, but then when do you get blocked and what blocks you, and then how can you move beyond that and actually connect with others with your gift.
Yeah. Put in a little plug for the local economic study group that the three of you are part of. You meet the second Thursday of each month from 5:30 to 7 p.m. in a downtown Olympia location, 112 4th Avenue East, Suite 206. Tell us something about your local economic study group and what you're up to. How long have you been running?
We've just been running for a few months.
Okay.
And we got together because we realized that it would be a great opportunity within our community to start figuring out what it is, be able to actually communicate, like in an opportunity like this, what it is that we are feeling regarding the local economy and how we can actually not only communicate with that with other people, but also what are some of the things that are going on in the world. So what we do is we actually have a reading that we tend to read before the meeting. We all get together, and this has been put together by many different community individuals, including the Buy Local program of Sustainable South Sound, has helped ignite it and initiate it to come together. And what we do is we read, we get together, we discuss what it is that we've read, how it has possibly inspired each of us individually to do different things in our life, and then also share what we already know is going on in community and what we've seen that's happening that may relate to that, so that we can stay going on that track and really integrated with the work that we're doing.
And this is open to other people who want to join the
You
group.
bet,
It's,
yeah.
like you say, only a few months old, and they can connect by emailing buylocalss@gmail.com.
Yes.
And that'll connect them in. They can find out what they need to know.
You bet.
What would you like people to be doing? I mean, presumably there are more sources of information that we could probably spend a whole evening talking about sources of information. But you folks also seem to want people to do practical things. I wonder if a couple of you could just like brainstorm a few practical things that people can do.
Well, I think just visualizing a better way is really useful. And so talking about that and articulating it and just putting it out there is really important. And that's part of the mission, I think, of our group, is to visualize something better and we start working towards it.
Okay, what other things can people do?
Move your money to a local financial institution,
Get it
buy
out-
local,
Get it out of the big
talk,
banks.
talk to your neighbors, you know, share that lawnmower.
Right.
Yeah.
Give someone a ride.
When you give someone a ride, you're reducing GDP, but what are you doing? You're making a friend. You're
Yep.
saving energy.
Yeah.
You're reducing emissions.
Yeah, saving
There's,
the climate.
You're giving someone a valuable ride somewhere.
Yeah, what would it be like if the price of oil was $200 or $300 a barrel? I bet we would be
Yeah.
sharing rides with each other a lot more.
There's some place, I'm trying to think, there's a city in Brazil, I think, where picking up hitchhikers is mandatory. And I don't remember the name of the city, but they're trying to think, you know, what
Yeah.
builds community as well as what's
Right.
good for the
There are
economy.
organized programs for what folks call smart jitneys, which are using the latest GPS and phone technologies to share rides. But what does that require? It requires trust, which is a form of social capital
Yeah.
in economist terms. So that's part of what our discussion is about, is how to build up those aspects of our economy so we can get what we need and actually create more meaning and joy
Yeah.
in community without using so many
Yeah.
resources.
Human connection instead of all the isolation that you were talking about at the beginning of the program.
You got it. And some of the other things I would just want to throw in there is grow the herbs that you use in your kitchen for cooking, and grow a small garden. Just start small, and like you said, connect with your neighbors, but find a way to share skills with your neighbors. Go prune that tree that you know how to prune that they didn't know how to, and perhaps they'll help you with your taxes. Really find ways that you can help one another.
Yeah, we're all in this together. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
you have to figure out, and
Right.
it's not
We
like,
are a common
me
fate on
against
a
them.
crowded planet.
are you what?
A common fate on a crowded planet
yeah,
we share right
yeah.
now. But going to that sustainability summit and participating in that conversation,
Yeah.
which is modeled
Great.
similarly to the way the food summit was organized, is
Yeah.
a great way to get involved
Well, I
and
want to
continue this
Yeah,
conversation.
I want to thank Marie Poland and Sash Sunday and John McLean. I want to thank all the folks who've been watching. Nowadays, we face gigantic problems, including peak oil, the climate crisis, a global economic system that causes wars, and an insensitive national economic system that oppresses people and shrinks the democracy here in the United States. The problems that we're facing nowadays are huge, and people feel powerless. But for many of the problems, a good solution would be to create a sustainable and humane local economy so we can meet our needs with fewer resources without damaging the rest of the world, and while strengthening our local communities' resilience and strengthening local economic democracy. A lot of solutions do exist at the local level. Cumulatively, they add up. We can indeed make our local communities more sustainable and more humane, and make our own lives happier. You can get information about a wide variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change by contacting the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation at 360-491-9093 or www.olympiafor.org. We're all one human family and we all share one planet. We can create a better world, but we all have to work at it. And the world needs you. Thanks.
Economic study group to open up the understanding of economics to include gift economies, to also look at future generations and the health of future generations as a basis for our economic organization.
Yeah, and the current model focuses on big corporations and, quote, job creation, and your approach really goes beyond that.
Well, our current economics relies on growth,
Yeah.
and we're at a historically new state in the evolution of humankind. We need to learn how to live in balance with our natural ecology and do that in a way that's equitable socially.
Yeah.
So sustainability combines both the ecological and the social fairness dimensions.
Yeah. People are finally discovering that all of our natural resources are limited. We're probably at peak oil, the point where we just can't extract oil at a faster and faster rate like we have been, and we'll have to start declining just because of the hard geological realities. The climate crisis means we have to stop burning so much coal and oil and other fossil fuels. The national and global economies are crashing, and all this comes together in a perfect storm. This month's TV program will focus on the local economy. We'll provide some fresh ways to understand and support local economics and some new resources and activities. Most of the examples that we'll discuss exist in Thurston County, Washington, but the general principles will apply to any local community. I'm happy to welcome 3 guests who have been working in various ways to support a healthy and sustainable local economy. We have Marie Poland here, and Sash Sunday and John McLean. Good to have you all here. I want to create a context for our conversation about local economy. Everybody talks about the global economy and the market economy. And John, can you just lay out what some of the main problems you see with mainstream economics and what problems or shortcomings are you trying to solve?
Well, Glenn, thank you. Economics has really narrowed in its focus. It's treating depletion of capital, natural capital, as income, and it also dismisses many aspects of our human capacities to solve these problems. It only measures money-based exchange. So we're trying in our local economic
Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. This TV series explores a variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. For many of the topics that we address, whether coping with peak oil and the climate crisis, or opposing the global economic system that causes wars and oppresses people in poor countries, or strengthening democracy and human rights, we keep coming back to one solution that pertains to all of these: creating a sustainable and humane local economy so that we can meet our needs with fewer resources without damaging the rest of the world and while strengthening our local communities' resilience and democracy. That prevents us from returning to business as usual, and that fantasy of just endless growth. So Mother Nature is requiring us, as you're saying, to do different things with our economy. I wonder if each of you could just briefly brainstorm a couple of the elements of a truly sustainable economy. What would a truly sustainable economy look like, Marie?
Well, I see it as we focus more on the connections that we have within the local environment that we're in, then things end up being more reciprocal. And so within a local economy, you have more support of a business that may be owned by your neighbors or the people that you know, and actually impact directly your neighborhood and the people in the surrounding area in beneficial ways.
Okay, Sash?
Well, in a truly sustainable economy would need to take into consideration the limited resources and the population, and hopefully, well, we would try to allocate all of those resources as appropriately as possible and make sure that there's access for all. I don't necessarily know how to do this, but that would be lovely.